been playing a lot of Pokemon TCG Pocket, and my favorite thing is how the rare cards have this like 2.5D effect that you can see right behind me. Pretty cool. It's a two-dimensional card, but it looks like it's 3D. Pretty sick. Well, I did that in After Effects, and I figured out how to do it incorporating some Photoshop work and some After Effects animation, and I'm here to show you guys how to do it. There's three base things you need. You need your character, you need a background element, and then you need your foreground element, which is probably the card shape, or really whatever shape you want to have this effect. It doesn't have to be a card. I'm just going to show you how to do it with a card shape. Let's get into it. Photoshop setup for this project is actually pretty simple. I'm going to turn off a bunch of my layers here and I'm going to show you what I have going on. First and foremost, I have a card mask. I made this mask out of the shape layer. I just pulled a rectangle out, not specific size, and I just rounded the corners to get a general card shape. That's how I got that. And then, holding Control, I selected that, went over to the Fill tool, created a new layer, and filled it. And that's where I got this. I then, using the Select tool, took a square out. So now I have my foreground, my full card mask, and I needed a character. So I took a photo from Pexels, and I selected the main subject out of it, the character out of it, and I brought it into this project, and I removed his back arms from his front arm and leg, and that is going to give us that depth that we are looking for. Now, this part is not necessary. This is kind of more of an advanced technique to go and separate the limbs. You do not have to do this in order to get the effect of depth. You can still get the depth effect without this. I just like it because it's going to add a little bit more depth to the image. The leg and arm in the back are going to move at a slower rate than the leg and arm and body in front when I do animate this. So that is why I have separated those. Do not feel you need to do that for this effect to work. Then I brought in just a image of clouds, and that is going to be my main background. On top of that image of clouds, I brought in another image of clouds that I'm going to use the screen blend layer in order to add some slight kind of detail. You're barely visible in the final animation. The last thing I did here is I brought in a picture of some fingerprints and I layer masked it to the card border that I created. And that will automatically be a pre-comp once you open After Effects and you open this into After Effects. So that was something that I knew I wanted. I wanted to have some kind of grunginess on my card and might as well just get everything masked out inside After Effects. So that is how I set this file up. If you have any questions about this, feel free to drop them in the comments. That being said, you don't have to export any of these. You just have to save your project. Save it to a specific folder that you know you can find easily, and then we hop over into After Effects. I'm going to click here. I'm going to go New Project, right-click Import File. I'm going to go straight to my Photoshop save files, and we're going to go to that file that we just made. Import that, and what I want to do is I want to editable layer styles, composition, retain layer sizes. So this is going to take that Photoshop file and it's going to turn it into a completely editable thing and a composition here in our After Effects file. So we've literally brought in all of those layers. They're all here. And the card border even has both of the images, the original images that I used to create it, already turned into a pre-comp. This is a very useful way to animate your Photoshop files, because anytime I go back into Photoshop and make any edits and command save it, it will automatically update in my After Effects file. So any little tweaks or things that I need to do, I can do super easily. Now the first thing that we're going to do is we're pretty much going to take all of these and we're going to turn them into a 3D layer, pretty much every single one of them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right click and we're going to add new null object. We're going to rename this object controller. And that is going to just sit at the top. I love that that just stays there. It's totally fine right where it's at. And what we're going to do with all of these is, or most of them, is going to tie them to that controller. That controller does need to be in 3D space as well. This can be done by using all of these, or we can just grab all of them, drag them up, controller one, super simple. And now when I go to my controller and I hit P to move it around, or R to move it around, I have this ability on this last one to move it and rotate it in kind of 3D space. But we want to keep that at 0 for now. Card mask right here is also going to be moved up to the top, probably right below that layer. And we're going to use all of these as, we're going to use it as a mask for most of our things. So that's why we called it card mask. I'm going to start with the background, and I'm going to come down here to no matte, and I'm going to hit card mask. Now it's staying inside those bounds. I'm also going to come to my midground, and I'm going to do the same exact thing. We don't have to mask every single thing in our composition, because some things will just already be kind of within the bounds of the card, and that shouldn't be a problem. But we will kind of be moving that in and out as we go. So it does look like this midground clouds are not getting masked to the card. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of it. Why spend time on something that's not working? We can also come back down into these layers and we can try and do that again. So midground, we can just bring it in right in front, and then let's try it one more time. Card mask. Now it works. For some reason there was a little bug there. I don't know why. Sometimes you got to just refresh the software. Adobe can be like that sometimes. Regardless, let's move forward. So we have our midground and our background and our character back all tied directly to our card mask. What I want to do here is I want to make sure that the midground isn't completely hiding my my background character's legs. So what I'm going to come here and do is click on this, and I had it set on soft light, and that works. That looks great. Seems to be just enough to add an effect over it. I'm going to turn my character front on. And what I really want to do here is just kind of get everything set to the 3D space that I want it to be set at. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my background and I'm going to go position, and I'm going to take this back position pretty far back. We want it pretty far back. We really want to sell that depth on it, and the best way to do that is by sending it as far back as possible. The background character back right here, I'm going to go to P on my keyboard as well, and we are going to also send that back, which means we might have to scale up. If we are going to scale up, we might have to scale with our, and we can zoom in here to make sure we're not getting too many duplicate things going on here. And we might have to mask part of it out as well. Now, one way to see if this effect is working properly is by using our controller here. And as you can see, we already have a little bit of that 2D effect, but it looks like it's a little too heavy. We might want a little less of an effect there. It really depends on how much we're planning on moving our character, right? So one thing that I am noticing is I don't think that I'm going to move it much more than about 15 degrees each direction. So we don't have to really, we can kind of just set it at that 15 and make sure everything looks good up to there. And then from there we can move on. Right now I do like how the 15 looks. I don't think it messes with the depth too much. I don't think it breaks too much. What we do have here at 0 is this arm and this leg. The leg looks fine, the arm doesn't. So we might actually separate these into 2 layers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take character back. I'm going to Control D on that. On the top one, I am going to hit enter and rename it to arm back. And the bottom one, I'm going to hit enter and hit leg back. and we will mask each one out individually. So we can just come up here to this tool, or I'm pretty sure you can just hit G on the keyboard. With the arm back selected, I am just going to make a mask around the arm. It does not have to be perfect. That's it. We have a mask around the arm, and that mask should automatically be set to add, which means it's removing the leg from that layer. And then I'm going to click on layer, and with that tool still selected, I am going to grab that leg. Should also be set to add. Now we can turn these off individually, and you will be able to see that, oh, it looks like we missed a little bit on that leg. So let's click on the leg, let's hit M, click on our mask, shift select one of these, select it again, and you can drag like that. And then that should fix any issues that we have there. Looking good. The reason I did this is I want to be able to kind of line these up a little bit better individually. So arm right here, what I'm going to do with this is when it's in this state, I want it as close to the back of my, or the front of my character as possible. I want the back end of this arm to be as close to the front of my character as possible, which is going to require some rotation. Here we have, we can just hit V on our keyboard, and we can use this to rotate, which I think I am going to rotate it back like this, and then I'm actually going to move it forward until kind of this image. See, where are we at? We're almost at 0. 0 is where it's going to, well, that's rotation. Position. This is the position. We want to make sure that it looks semi-decent from the angle 0 on the controller. So this is going to take some fiddling with, especially with whichever images you're using. Might take a little bit of fiddling, but I'm going to try and intersect these as close as possible so that when they're at 0, it doesn't look bad, but also once we start moving this controller, it doesn't look bad. See how it really separates pretty quick. This side, I don't really care that much about. That looks fine. It's still giving that depth, but the rest of it is not working very well. So I'm going to keep this back at 0, and we're just going to fiddle with this until it looks semi-decent here. And I think I got it about as good as I'm going to get it without any more tweaking. But we're just going to move on to the leg and make sure the leg is looking good. So what I'm going to do is we're going to just kind of move this, make sure, yeah, honestly, the leg doesn't look bad. Kind of want to go to 15. And it looks like the leg is set to backdrop as well. We're going to set that to card mask so that it's not clipping. And let's see what we got here. Looks like the back leg looks pretty good. We don't want to go any further than 15 for this effect. Otherwise, it starts to break down a little bit. Control Z. We're going to set this at 0. And then we're flat on. Now, one thing I did notice is the midground, the new midground layer, is not set to our controller. So I'm going to set that to our controller. And as we move, now our midground should be moving with our controller. Oh, one more thing. Midground is not set to 3D because we brought it back in. Now we set it to 3D. Now we can move our controller. And now you can slightly, well, you can see it right there. That midground white cloud is really definitely moving. Now, one thing I think I might do with that back leg, just to make sure it's not so separated, is we might spend a little time trying to move that back leg in as well. So I'm going to close up the effects on arm, and I'm going to come down to back leg, and we're going to just kind of mess with this position on this. I think that looks a lot better. We can also kind of try this on the top down view, and that also looks great. We are missing our foot when we go down too much, which is fine, but I don't think it looks so bad to the point where it starts breaking. So we can just kind of leave this at 0, and we're on the right track, if you will. The next thing we're going to mess with is our midground here. I'm going to hit P on that. I'm going to get rid of the controls on leg. Click on our position for our midground, and I'm just going to take this back on the Z axis. Honestly, keeping it right in between. See, so this is right where our front layer is. You can see it's hopping in front of our front layer. We want it right in between our front layer, and this is where it starts to clip with the back layer. So really about 24 pixels back. We do want it a little further back, and I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. So we have midground set to a good depth there. I'm gonna go hit P, and then we're good. Hides our positioning. Let's mess with this card border here. I really want to swap the colors on this, actually. I had them swapped in Photoshop. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come on to my Photoshop file. I'm gonna click on fingerprints. I'm gonna press Control I to invert it. I think that that looks better. I'm gonna hit Command Save my file, and we can come right back in here and it's already updated in our After Effects, which I think just looks a lot better. Now, if you want to animate this, right now we have a 5-second animation in our timeline. I can come from the front spot here and just go 15 seconds into our animation, move one of our controllers over. And if we're getting that clipping there, very easy fix. Come over here, let's click on our background. Come over here and go tile, and it's motion tile is what we're gonna grab. We're gonna drag that right onto our backdrop. And you can come here and you can output width. Make sure you have mirrored edges on. So we're just going to output width this and output width the top, set them to about 680, 700. Should be fine. And now, as we move this around, we're no longer gonna see that clipping background. It will be repeating, but you're not gonna notice it as much. And it still gives a really cool effect here. So let's click on our orientation on our controller. Let's have it set at 0. We'll move that to the very beginning. We're gonna come here to 15 seconds in, and we can turn it to about, we said no more than 15. Let's do 15 degrees. And at 1 second, we're gonna do 15 degrees on the other axis as well, which will be 345. And then here on 1 minute or 1 second 15, we are going to get rid of this and set this one back to 0. Come over here and set this to 345. Actually, I think it might be, yeah, I think it's, let's see, might be negative 345. 345 like that. 15 more seconds. We're gonna set this back to 0. Set this to 15. And we just kind of go through this until we get a nice little rotation, right? And as you can see, that foot back there is being seen as not being there. We don't want to break the illusion. So this one, we might actually not go much more than 3. Which, you know, you can fix that in the Photoshop file if you want to, try and add a shoe in. I think it's fine the way it is. We can just leave it there. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna set this at 0. And we can set this at 0 as well. And we can take all of these. It's gonna be pretty choppy because they're not easy eased, right? So I want to take all of them, easy ease them by hitting F9. And if we set our scroller right here over to 0 seconds, 0 frames, and we hold Alt, we can drag these out and they will proportionally move. And this can kind of set up a much smoother effect. Now, one thing I don't like about this is honestly this one right here. I think we can delete that one and we can move this one over to there. And let's take all of these again and let's just drag them out to there, and we can come into our graph editor, and I think that looks fairly good. I will say I almost want this one to, you can mess with some of the easing on these as well. Maybe if I go like this, I get rid of these, that, and that. That definitely gives that sense of depth that we were looking for, and the card looks pretty grimy. One thing we can do is we can go in here and we can take that fingerprints. We can go T, opacity, and just kind of drop that down a little bit. And then that can kind of give a little bit more of a realistic like cardboard effect on it, right? It's like, oh yeah, this is a dirty card, but you still get that 3D effect. This is how you do it. Take the character that you're writing or the world you're writing a story about, your novels, and start creating your own little kind of digital trading cards that look really cool and have really cool effects to them. You can start really working on backgrounds, like maybe the hero of your story is in the foreground there, but then the background is the city that they come from, and maybe there's a side character further back. Like, you can really create some detailed ones. This is just a simple, quick one to do. And this is more just giving you the tools of how to do it. You're just messing with the kind of the Z axis and separating some pieces from where you really want to add depth. But I hope you guys have a good one. I hope this tutorial was useful. I'm going to continue creating cool things like this, and I will continue making tutorials if I think that they might be useful or enjoyed. Have a good one, you guys.